Did someone say crude oil analysis? Yep, hey, the professor here. Well, we are going to talk about this massive drop on crude oil. We're going to give you the breakdown. We're going to look at the weekly and we're going to walk it down because I want you to be ready for this week. You should not be blowing your account because you think crude oil is going to go up and it keeps going down and down. We trade in this group what we see and not what we feel. So let's get right into our crude oil analysis video. Okay, so we are going to start our analysis on the weekly time frame. We need to spend time on the higher time frames to see what is going on. So we can clearly see right here, we have an area that is former resistance to the top side right over here, and right over here. I'm going to kind of zoom in on this right here because I want you to begin to see the charts from a different perspective. Now, we are at that critical stage right here on the weekly. Now, as we kind of zoom in on this weekly time frame, and if we head over to our Fibonacci levels and we kind of do this quick fib right in here, we notice that, again, remember, zones are areas and they're never an exact line, that we closed below the 61.8. We are in this critical area on crude oil right now. In my opinion, just based on the weekly, this wick right here did take a good 80% of the liquidity that was in this candle right here. So that's just for starters, okay? That's just for starters. Some people will ask me, hey, professor, is oil going to go up or down? Well, here's the answer. I don't know, right? Only people behind the scenes know that. And that's why I want to make sure that I help you understand to trade what you see and not what you feel, regardless of the news reports, of the oil production, of the cuts, of the not so cuts. Let's trade the technical analysis on crude oil. So going back into the chart, there's a couple of things that we have to kind of keep in mind here as we move forward and move down on the time frames. Okay, so what we want to do moving forward is we want to make sure that we are keeping this area here because, again, we have that previous resistance. Will this turn into support? So what I want to do is I want to get rid of the Fibonacci. I want to grab a text tool and I want to go ahead and label this, okay, weekly resistance, because we have not seen enough evidence yet of support, but we know here, and it would help if I can spell that word correctly. Thank you. That is going to be that resistance that we saw here in these previous levels. Okay, this right here was a false breakout, but then we came back up, we retested, and we shot up for a little bit. Okay, so again, we're not 100% sure yet on that strong support level, but we know that's a resistance level that we will kind of keep an eye on as we move forward. So now what I want to do is I want to drop down to our daily time frame. Okay, so now we are going to focus in on our daily time frame. Now I'm going to kind of zoom in and I'm going to show you something right here on the daily. My first hunch based on price action is looking at this candle and how it closed. So that candle closed like a doji candle. Now, if you go back up here to the top, we can see a similar candle closed of that nature towards the bottom of this long red candle right here. And then the following day, we had a massive drop, another drop. So here we are again. We are at the lower end of this level that we have identified on the weekly chart as a resistance level. It could turn out to be a strong support level, but as we look to the left, we have some evidence that this has turned previous support on the daily time frame. And you see, I think that's why it's so important that when you're going to analyze any trading pair, you have to look at a multi-time frame analysis, because we clearly saw on the weekly how we did not have so much evidence of support. But when we drop down to the daily, we can definitely see that levels of support has happened on multiple occasions. So as we kind of go back here and begin to reevaluate, my initial thought process going into this, based on what I see, because we closed so low, is that crude oil has the possibility to continue moving down. Okay, not that we're not going to get a pullback, not that it's not going to go back up, but my initial feeling is that we will continue to see some sort of a slide when it comes to crude oil. So the next thing I want to do now is I want to kind of establish these kind of obvious areas when it comes to the daily time frame. And to do that, it makes it much easier if you head over to the line chart, and then I'm going to grab a box here, and I want to kind of put my cursor where I begin to see a lot of these multiple touches, both to the top side and support. And we begin to identify these areas here. And I'm actually going to do it with a horizontal line first, and then we will kind of zoom in there. So I can definitely see that area there. Going a little bit further down, I can definitely see that area there. And I'm going to go one more to the bottom. I can definitely see that area there. And then to the top side, we have a couple of areas here that we've already marked up, but we'll go ahead and mark one more to this side here. And again, kind of, we can see that area in there. So now what I want to do is head back over to our candles chart. And this is going to help us as we walk price down to the smaller time frames. Okay. So again, we're kind of looking at this right in here, and we can begin to see again how we had been climbing on this daily time frame. We had a couple of waves here, and now we have begun that descent back down. Now, again, in my opinion, we would really need price to possibly close below this area to really have a complete change in direction. Meaning, if we close below that 76 to 78 area, probably 76, 87 or so, then we are going to continue sliding down. Or are we going to come back down to retest this area as we did over here on a couple of occasions within a 3-day span? So good thing is that a lot of times price will come back to retest these levels, right? So that's kind of where we are at now. Now, the next thing I want to do on the daily is to go ahead and draw a Fibonacci retracement. Now, that fib level is going to match up a lot with the weekly level. Okay, so we can see here how we're below the 61.8. We're in this area here that I call the blue light special, right? If we can get price for a buy here to be able to take it up, we're getting in at a better price. We still have to wait until the Sunday market gap to see if we have any significant gaps. But again, on a scalping standpoint, this would normally be an area that we would look for price to scalp to take crude oil up 20 to 30 points. But again, because this is the weekend, we do need to wait to see where price is going to open on Sunday. But this is why we begin to mark up our areas, and it's going to look a lot clearer as we move down the different time frames. So now what I want to do, I want to go from the daily and I want to kind of move back down towards our 8-hour chart. And the reason why I move the 8-hour chart is because as you begin to move down in time frame, and I'm going to remove this Fibonacci level, right? We can begin to see patterns evolving, okay? Because now what we do see on the 8-hour time frame is something that we did not see on the other time frames. And that's going to be how this candle closed right here. It did close above the previous 8-hour time frame, but again, it did create this doji pattern right here. So temporarily, at the end of the trading day on Friday, we did have a small push up by the bulls to begin to try to drag price back up. And that gives me a little inclination that for the short term, we might see price pull up to some degree. And we'll talk more about that as we move through the different time analysis. So on the 8-hour, we are seeing a little bit of a possibility that we may get a small pullback up, because in reality, we are still in this uptrend until we clear 76.87, and we are not there yet. Okay. Now let's take a look at this view from a 4-hour perspective. Now we want to drop down, and again, we begin to look for evidence in these different levels. And I want to kind of bring your attention to this level right here. Okay. Because over here, price came up, retested, and shot up to that next level, right? And it also happened over here as well, had a retest and kind of came back up. So we are at a critical junction right here, and that's why I think the Sunday gap may or may not reveal something to us. We have to kind of wait and see what may or may not happen, but we're going to begin to walk down these zones here. So hopefully now, as we are halfway through the full crude oil analysis video, you have begun to see and develop maybe a vision for your trading strategy for this week. Again, if you are in my members group, we will be providing constant updates on crude oil for our scalping techniques that we've been so successful. So if you have not yet had a chance to join our members group, I'm going to leave about 10 slots open at that $5 price point. Definitely want to get in there, join the others inside of that group, connect, and definitely have access to the private chat area, which in alone, it's worth the $5 that is. And then, of course, also the opportunity to get not only crude oil charts, but also some of the other analysis that I'll do inside of the members area. So as we begin to look at this now, again, everything here is still pointing that, we haven't broken the trend, but we are climbing downward, but we need to wait to see what's going to happen with price action. So here we are, and this is kind of how we ended the day on Friday. We are in this consolidation box in this area right in here. So we are going to wait for some type of signal of a breakout of this area. And the breakout is either going to happen above this zone, okay, or below this zone and come down towards that $80 price point, okay? So we have to wait for that confirmation. Now, that confirmation always will happen on a smaller time frame before it happens on a larger time frame. So as we look at this here now, and we're looking at the 1 hour, again, the sentiment is that, here, this area here, this changes the true direction of this market, in my opinion. Okay, so again, this area would have to be compromised and closed below if we are really going to see then price hover down back again into the 60s. Yes, the 60s. So that's what we're waiting for, to see what's going to happen. In the meantime, we are going to take our trades off of these different zones, just like we did here in this area right here. This was a nice example of a break, retest, and then we just came back down to the next zone. And that's what we talk about over and over inside of our members area. So now we're going to begin to walk it down, and let's start with our 15-minute chart. Okay, let's start with our 15-minute chart. And again, I want to bring this up kind of a 30,000 foot view and then begin to zoom in here, because everything now is going to have to happen inside of this area right in here. Now, what I do want you to take note of are these zones that have been marked up. And at the same time, if you are going to scalp crude oil, For me, it's very important to also mark up every 50 cents for price. And I'm going to tell you why, because a lot of times that's going to be your take profit area. So here, for example, I want to mark 84.50, and I'm going to show you why here in just a minute. Okay, that's pretty close enough right there. And if you see there, right, crude oil loves those round psychological numbers of the zeros. So that's why I look always for some type of action to happen around the 50s and the zeros, right? That was 50. We had a small rejection at the 50, and then we kind of came back down there. Now, if we look here at 85 and we draw another Fibonacci, another area, right, we can see how price came down, bounced off that area, even though it was only temporarily. But for those of us that are scalping 10, 15, 20 points, that one bounce alone gave us 34 points. So I like marking, the different levels every 50 because we tend to see something happening in that area. We saw it again there. There's our 86 level. So as you go down into the charts, what I want you to do is go into your chart, and if you need to pause this video and kind of mark up. And there you go again, right? Look at that, right? Look at that, how ironically that was 83.50, right? And we saw that rejection. So take a moment, put this video on pause, and just kind of mark up your charts every 50 cents because it tends to have some type of a reaction. There it is again, right? Near these areas, right? Near these areas. So as I get down to the smaller time frames, I just take a moment and I mark up these areas because I'm going to see price react in one way or another near these areas over and over again. And maybe that's something you haven't noticed. And if you learned that one thing today, then awesome. That means this video was fruitful for you. Okay, so now we've kind of marked up within our 50 cent areas, and I'm going to begin to kind of zoom back out. And we are sitting on a very small time frame now, but we are going to be working within these areas between 78 and 86 right now as we move forward for the rest of the week. Okay, now we are going to zoom this part in, and we are going to drop to our final time frame of this video, and then I'm going to give you a little bonus at the end of this video here as well. So let's get rid of this right here. Now, again, we noticed here how, again, this is something that we had marked up, right? These psychological numbers, small time frame, more room for error, but we can see that we're getting these different bounces in different areas. So kind of as you begin to look at your game plan moving into the beginning of the week, again, Sunday, Monday, we need to focus in on these areas right in here. Okay, we need to focus in on these areas right here. Are we going to come back down and reject and kind of come back up? Are we going to shoot straight up? All of that will be answered early in the week. So the first thing I want to do is label this section as the gap. And again, for those of you that are new, the gap means this is where price closed on Friday. And when the market opens on Monday, there is going to be two options. It could either not gap, which means price opens right there. Okay. We gap up, meaning the price was opened at a higher price, and for that we'll mark that green, okay? Or we gap down to the bottom side, and again, what that means is the reverse. Price was settled in at a lower price. Either way, what tends to happen is when the market first opens, price, if it opens to the top side, price moves up for a little bit, and then what happens is usually within a few hours to 24 hours, price comes back down and closes the gap. On the other side, if we gap down, price will move a little bit away from the gap, and then eventually we'll come back up to close the gap. Now, let me give you some advice on trading the gap. For me personally, I need to see 30 points or more on crude oil to enter a smaller lot size on the gap. From everything I've gone back in my journals for the past 2 years on crude oil, gaps close within 24 hours over 86% of the time. That doesn't mean that there have been some gaps that went days. There was even on a couple of occasions where the gaps took over a week to close. But for the most part, gaps will close fairly quickly. Now, again, this is where I don't want you to jeopardize your account because you throw in everything you have thinking, oh, there's a 10-point gap. It's going to close in 10 seconds. And it goes a few hours, you over leverage, and then you blow your account. This is a strategy that if we get 30 points or more, meaning it opens 30 points or more higher or lower, or even if it starts at 10 points, but then runs away from the gap another 20 points and creates a 30-point gap, there is where I enter. That's usually where I'll send a message to our members area. Hey, I'm looking to enter this trade because of the gap. But again, it's a smaller lot size than usual because that position could be open for a few minutes, for a few hours, for a few days. You have to anticipate that it's going to be open for a long time. But again, over 86% of the gaps are closed fairly quickly and usually within a few hours, if not a few minutes. And in some occasions, it might actually go 24 to 48 hours. So that is the scenario there for the gap on the Sunday gap open. And again, this is something that you've really got to look at. If you've never done it, just look at it. You're going to see gaps on different pairs within the Forex market, but specifically to crude oil, we tend to see usually some sort of a gap. Price opens, runs away from that gap, and then comes back to fill that gap there. Okay, so I want to kind of leave you with this Fibonacci image right here. If you have not yet had a chance to do so, I'm going to link this video training that I did at the end of this video. I want you to watch it. It works. Trust me, it works on the different time frames. But of course, as you move down in time frames, you may not see such precision at the 61.8. If I'm going to use my fib levels at the 15 or lower, then I'm going to look for entry between the 61 and somewhere in the 88. But this works. This is how we took this massive sell all the way down on many occasions because we just did a simple Fibonacci from a 61.8. Many of our members cashed in, kept it rolling, took their profits, let it ride, whatever the case may be. So check out this training that should be popping up here shortly at the end of this video. Okay, I hope you got some value on this video. Again, we do a full Sunday crude oil analysis video every Sunday, God willing. And so I hope you get some value. Drop your comments below. Let me know if you learned something. Let me know if you enjoyed this type of analysis. And let me know if you want other charts analyzed to this level. We do a lot more in our members area with short trades, shorter analysis so people can get in, get out, and make their pips or points for the day. Thank you so much for watching. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday, and we'll talk to you soon.